in Montgomery. Megan, why don't you introduce yourself to the community and give us a little bit of how you are connected to the adoption and foster care field?
I work with Adoption Star, which is an agency out of Buffalo, where that's where our main office is. And I've worked in adoption actually since 2006. I worked for an international adoption agency out of Brookline, Massachusetts, before moving back to New York and working with Adoption Star. And now I oversee their international adoption programs. We no longer have primary programs in intercountry adoption, but we still support a lot of families who are adopting internationally through the home study process and post-placement period.
What made you get into this field? Was there something that drove you to it, or was it an accident, or?
No, it was not accidental. It was completely purposeful. And I just, in high school, I had an interest in working in adoption. And I went and learned with my guidance counselor about how I could work in the field. And that's how I went into school to be a social worker, and then basically tried different field placements to see if there were other things I was interested in besides adoption. And in the end, I wasn't. I was still most interested in working in the field of adoption. So I worked for a little while with children with social emotional disorders, doing counseling at school and in their homes. And then I just sort of came back to adoption and ended up doing that since 2006.
What kind of things do you find are misconceptions about adoption? And I find that a lot of people don't realize that the need for support for these children coming over internationally. Is there something that you've learned over the years that the community may not know?
Well, I think that overall, one thing that I feel and that I notice is that parents sometimes feel like they should have all the answers because they're the parents and they've been through the trainings that we do pre-adoption. And then sometimes maybe they hesitate a little bit to reach out for help post-adoption. And I really want to change that. I also think that within the mental health fields, like counselors and therapists, I feel like there's not enough awareness of the impact of adoption on all members that are touched by adoption. And so I think that that's also something that I would like to change, just be able to educate more people on the grief and loss surrounding adoption and kind of how that can play out for different people, so that more mental health professionals are aware of the need to address those issues and to just kind of come from a trauma-informed perspective when they're working with any client that they're working with, because they may have a history that involves grief and loss.
When it comes to the international adoptions and Adoption Star, what kind of things are implemented or helpful to families that are bringing home, then transitioning these children to come home, to make sure that they all as a family have support? What kind of things are out there?
So some of the things that we try to do is, connect families with other families who have adopted, so that they have some support network locally. They are working with different primary agencies, so they also get connected that way to families that are also working to adopt through the same country, right? They might even travel with another family. And we do try to encourage that, to make those connections and to try to keep those relationships so that you don't feel like you're alone during the process, but then also after, when you're actually parenting and living a life that involves thinking about adoption all the time, right? And I think also just we try to provide a lot of education up front. So we provide education as part of our home study process as a requirement, classes that families all have to attend, but then also we have additional requirements for credit hours that they collect of different types of information and education that they can get to help support them so that they feel more prepared. We also try to provide post-adoption help after adoption. So when families reach out to us and they need support for whatever reason.
In your journey as a social worker and working in adoption, were there any types of, I love asking this, I ask it for everybody. So,
Yeah.
any type of books or mentors? I added mentors. I used to just ask books because a lot of people find that there's some books that they recommend to families or they read themselves that really
Mhm.
resonated with them. Or some people have some really great mentors that they look up to that help them through their own journey. Is there
Yeah.
anything that you'd like to share that you've recommended in the past or read yourself?
Yeah, no, so many. I'm like the queen of books.
Oh, oh,
You don't
oh.
want to see my
I don't
nightstand.
have a
It's
lot. I don't have a
embarrassing.
lot of time for books. Oh,
I mean, I have great intentions for reading every single book, and I've read quite a few. I think that you know, I don't think that there's someone necessarily like a specific person that I've met that was my mentor from the beginning. But I do think that there are certain people that have really helped me to shape my practice and the way that I work with families. And I would say like Patty Kagan, who, and I've never met her personally, but we've emailed and talked over the phone. And she has a book, Parenting Your Internationally Adopted Child. And that really was, you know, a book that I read very early on in my career that I felt was very influential. It's got tons of sticky notes in it, and the binding is worn. But also Deborah Gray. I really think that attachment has a lot to do with the way that we see ourselves and the way that we parent. And the way that we interpret what our children are doing and its impact on us. So I think those are two right now, probably my two top authors and mentors, but also Nadine Burke Harris, who wrote the book, The Deepest Well, right? And it's like, it's, it's very powerful, right? You have to think about how your past has influenced who you are today, and for children, how it's going to influence their future, right?
let's go into what you're going to be speaking about at the conference. This is actually a very good topic. A lot of people, when they are going into the adoption process, for some reason, don't realize it's. They realize it as you're telling them, and they go, "Oh, yeah, that makes sense." But a lot of people don't realize how their parenting comes from traumas and experiences of their life. It makes sense as you're
Mhm.
saying it,
Oh
but a
yeah,
lot of people don't realize it in that
sure.
moment. That kid knows how to push that button.
Yeah, yeah.
So why don't you give us a little synopsis of what you're going to be speaking about?
So basically, I think for me, I came to this topic just in being a parent myself, but also and I guess maybe that's when I started to put the pieces together. I'd been working with parents for a really long time before that, and was trying to figure out like what's the thing that's not clicking, that's not connecting, where we're missing each other, what's the reason, right? We're trying all these things, but something's just not quite connecting. And then as I was parenting, I started to notice these things myself. And I was like, you know what? But I know my kids' history. Like I know everything, right? Because they've been with me from the very beginning. And that made me just sort of delve into this a little bit deeper and realize how, no matter how your child joins your family, when you're parenting, you're going to be triggered in different ways. That is going to make it harder for you to be the parent that you want to be. And so I really wanted to bring that to people. I think that, like you said, I don't think it's something that people think about that much before you are a parent.
Is this the type of workshop that anyone should attend? Like, is it important? Why is it so important for everyone to hear this information?
Yeah, I think that it's important for any parent or prospective adopted parent to start thinking about, their history and their past, and how just to kind of come to a place of understanding about how they feel and how they processed their life, whether your life was great growing up, like you feel like you had the perfect childhood. There's still things then that you need to think about and understand, because when you have a child who is going to be triggering you in some way, you can start to make those connections a little bit better, and then also step back and take a breath before you are reactively parenting to whatever's going on.